everyone. Welcome to an invigorating conversation on optimizing HR through generative AI, strategies for effective implementation, crafted by the Economic Times, ETHRWorld, and HONO. Today, I have the absolute privilege of hosting the power voices from across the industry. Joining me in ET Studios are Sudeep Dev, CHRO, Volvo Eicher Commercial Vehicle Limited, Vaishnavi Shukla, Head HR Comviva, and Randeep Singh, co-founder and COO, HONO. Thank you so much for joining, Sudeep, Randeep, Vaishnavi. It is such a pleasure to have you on board.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So we are all set to explore the frontiers that AI is going to unravel for all of us. It is going to be an exciting conversation that I'm looking forward to, which kind of really relooks at defining the HR contours, as they say. So I'm not going to do any more context setting. I'm going to deep dive into the conversation. And that brings me to the first question. How can organizations integrate generative AI technologies seamlessly with their existing HR systems and processes? So, Sudeep, if I may start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Suma, for asking me these questions. I think first we start with, generative AI is very, very supportive for, start with the workforce management. I think this is one of the key area that when we use this generative AI, the workforce predictive analysis, workforce management, how we analyze the workforce, what will be the future trend of the workforce, that is really helpful for, with the help of the generative AI. And we are extensively using this tool for predictive what kind of talent roadmap we should have in next 3 to 5 years in view of the changing technology in next 4 to 5 years, particularly in automotive industry. So workforce management, workforce planning is one of the key things which we are, taking help from the generative AI. Second thing is the talent management, entire talent management process, which we are, using the generative AI. For example, analyzing the attrition, how would be the future attrition trend in next 3 to 5 years, and it will give a lot of predictive data, and we can analyze, and then we can start the predictive hiring based on this data, generative AI. This is very, very important, and our whole objective is to trusting of our employee, not tracking of the employee, and that is why entire life cycle of our employee is managed through generative AI. How we give a better employee experience through generative AI. So these are the tools which we are extensively using. It's really quite helpful to give a better employee experience through generative AI.
Fantastic. I think that's beautiful. It looks like a very bright and shiny picture. Randeep, I'm going to bring you in. What is your thought around this?
I think it's so beautifully evolved as a concept of generative AI. Since the launch of 3.5 GPT in 2022, if I'm not wrong, November, the way it got adopted was, 1 million users in a span of few days, right? So there comes the belief of enterprise HR alike that there is something which is here to stay and transform the entire function of enterprise, right? So from me, if I look at the CHRO lens, there are two things that open up for implementing generative AI in HR. One, of course, is the enterprise agenda. How do you evolve with generative AI? And second agenda is how does HR innovate with generative AI? And of course, Sudeep has shared some thoughts there. But when you marry these both worlds is when you will actually get the right picture to implement what's the real scorecard on enterprise level that you would want to integrate when it comes to your workforce management or talent management. How do you integrate that? And then at the end of it, you take a call. How do you differentiate between what are you going to build internally, or are you going to buy something and then leverage it and build it on top of what is already existing, right? I think one statement that I, of course, would want to make is that, first of all, as chief of HRs, I think people would need to fall in love with the problems that they're facing and also look at the opportunity that generative AI gives. That's the time when the real implementation starts, because today HR faces right from talent sourcing to engagement to onboarding to performance to pay for performance, diversity, equality, a plethora of problems, right? So if you fall in love with those problems, you see an opportunity in Gen AI. And that's where the implementation routes actually come into picture in enterprises or globally the enterprises alike. I think that's essentially the nutshell of how one would implement it. Create SWAT teams, as I put it, special tactical teams at enterprise level, and also appoint leaders in the function for them to come together and see what are the use cases, does it really fit into the enterprise scorecard, and then take it to the next level. I think that's essentially forms the foundational element of implementing Gen AI and adopting Gen AI.
I mean, that looks like a very clean roadmap that leaders would want to get onto. Vaishnavi, I'll just bring you in. What are your thoughts around this?
Well, I think, as you rightly said, AI is inevitable. So, why is it inevitable? Because it has become a part of human life. And fortunately, unfortunately, all of us are dealing with the same set of people who would probably be using ChatGPT for their kids' homework, for themselves, for creating PPTs, etc., etc. So, we have to adopt it. What we do at our end, and as a HR head, I think what we try to do is stay calm. We now have AI. Right? That's how we talk about AI. Yeah. So, if I look at it from the lens of HR, you see that two things that really excites of its implementation into the various aspects of HR. One is we are in a world which is hyper-personalized. So are our generations, so is our mix of workforce, so is our problem. So we now need an amendment or a solution or a landscape or a charter that gives me a hyper-personalized solutioning as well. So what AI will help is in two ways. One, it will help us give the new side of solution, very, very innovative solution to the similar problems that we were facing, plus identify the new set of problems which we were trying to identify, but in lack of, let's say, tools or data or a pattern to read it or a tool to assess it, we were just trying to guess about it. So I think the best way that AI would help us to look at the similar problem with not only the same lens but the new lens, also help us do a lot of innovations around the solutions and get into personalized aspects, which is the reality of this hyper-personalized workforce now.
Absolutely. I think it couldn't have been a better start to this conversation. So very different perspectives are coming in, and that does bring me to the second round of it, and it puts me on that path that I'm tempted to ask that how can organizations really integrate this generative AI technology seamlessly with their existing HR systems and processes. That is one of the actionable steps that we would definitely love to hear from you, guys, because that is something that they want to adopt, but they are very afraid because I already have something in place. So how do I work around this? How do I make it like a success matrix? So on that note, Randeep, if I could just start with you.
Yeah, I think this is a classical problem, right? With any technology that gets introduced in the market, when it comes to adapting it, and actually bring it into the overall value chain and delivery. The same is with Gen AI, right? We understand that there is an opportunity in every operative area of HR. You pick up from manpower planning to predictions to onboarding to recruitment. You name a function, you've got an opportunity. But I think the edge lies in, as I said, HR understanding what are the key pain areas that they would want to solve and whether Gen AI has got a solution for that or not. Typically, HR currently struggles with a lot of administrative work, which essentially means that there are a lot of transaction volumes that come onto HR, right? So do I see an answer in generative AI? The answer is yes, because I can actually look at increasing the operational efficiency of everyone who is working on transaction on daily basis, and I could be introducing chatbots through Gen AI, right? So it's about looking at the practicality of the realistic problems that I'm facing as HR professional or HR leader, and then seeking that solution from generative AI. I think that's the best way to go about it. I was interacting with a few Gartner analysts, and they were saying that while we talk about recruitment or we talk about job descriptions and skill libraries and stuff, the whole thing comes down to generative AI actually handling the volume of transactions that HR currently is handling. Yeah. So how could you bring a transformation in the overall volumes that are there in an enterprise, bring it down and make it more efficient, right? Okay. So I think it's about seeking and looking at the right opportunity as per my problems, because every enterprise is different, right? Absolutely. And then see what is a bolt-on that you could do, right? And then again comes a classic question of, do I have the capability to do it and roll it out? Is the tech literacy in my enterprise? So there are 100 questions that will erupt, right? That's why, as I said earlier, you need to marry the enterprise scorecard with what my HR scorecard is. Look for commonality and deliver that value, right? So that's the best way for HR to actually take it. As for the experience that I have had with Gen AI implementations across clients, This is the classical problem that one struggles with, but the answers are there out in the market, right? It's about that call that we need to take on ground.
Yeah, and like you said, just fall in love with your problems first.
Absolutely.
And just to add,
Yeah,
along with the
Vaishnavi,
HR
please.
scorecard and the KPI scorecard, I think if you actually match it with the business scorecard, it will do wonders thereafter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think another point which is more important, I think most of the organization, the talent landscape is changing. 50 to 60% they are millennium generation. They are very tech savvy. They want their grievance has to be addressed quickly, and this is the one way that we can give a better employee experience through Gen AI. And I think the most of the organization, the large organization, they are using this tool to how quickly we resolve the employees queries through chatbot, through different tool what we are using in AI.
And if I may add one more point. See, there is a lot of data that has already been generated by HR over the years, right? But the clue is, what are we doing with that data, right?
That's a big question.
That's a big question, right? There comes analytics. There comes, top of the mind solutions that are there in the market, adopt them and see what we could do. But that's where the real opportunity is. How do we bring sense to the data? Because what is generative AI? It is just taking some prompt and giving you a data in a very structured form. Similar to the concept of what we call as co-piloting, right? So we now talk about co-piloting, right? Let's co-pilot the data, right? So the idea also is looking at what volumes of data do I have? Do I really have a system that manages volume of data? And then put a system in place whether that data can really make sense for me at an enterprise level, at a business level, at a functional level.
What can I consume?
What can I consume? What can I interpret? What is the engine that I need to put in place? Would that really make sense for my enterprise, right? It's something that we need to answer. So, as I said, it opens up a Pandora's box, but I think as HR chiefs, people will have to focus on what is the problem that I need to solve, connect to it, and then look for an apt solution.
Absolutely. I think that sounds like a very foolproof solution that you're throwing out and saying that, this is something that you need to imbibe. And of course, like Sudeep said, there's a big problem with the multi-generational workforce coming in. And especially in 2024, when the Zoomers are on their way into an organization and the Boomers are going out, there's going to be a huge disparity, if I could say. So the policies, the practices have to be like a super fast mode, right? So that is an interesting, I think Vaishnavi, you wanted to add
Revamp
something, right?
has to be pretty much faster, and most importantly, along with the speed of that revamping of the policies and the approach, culture, the lens through which you will revamp them has really changed. It has got so many perspective. It's become probably multi kind of an approach, that's kind of it.
Yeah, and adoption never becomes a challenge, right? Because no one trained us on ChatGPT. I just prompted and I got an answer. I prompted a co-pilot, I got an answer.
Correct,
so adoption of this technology, when it comes to particularly to implementation landscape, will never be a problem.
Absolutely.
Connecting to the right problem and solving it is something that's most important. Right? Then the technology makes sense.
That's
Otherwise,
a beautiful one.
the energy always goes into solving the wrong problem in enterprise, right? Which is not required.
Yeah.
And that's where the finger pointing comes to tech. This is not working for me.
Yeah, maybe
So
we were
need
too
to-
ambitious on this one and it did not really land us anywhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of processes have been put in place and they've failed miserably, right? So that matrix, that understanding, I think is superb. So thank you for spotlighting that for us, Randeep. That brings me to the next leg of, the conversation here, that what are those key matrix or the indicators to watch out for while you're measuring the success of a Gen AI system or a process that you've implemented? I think all leaders are answerable. We say that CHROs is a business angle, right? So if there is a KPI, if you could share that with our viewers, that'll be helpful. So
yeah, so I think again it's a classical ask from any function who is adopting new technology. What have you got in return, right? So our cost versus ROI matrix can never fade away from technology implementation. That remains constant, right? So that's the first measure that any leader probably at a business controlling level would ask any technology that gets implemented on. So that's of course number one. Number two, with HR lens that I can actually look at, the self-services capabilities and the efficiencies that you achieve using chatbots or conversational AI, which is one level of implementation of Gen AI. is something that becomes very important. Am I able to reduce a transaction that typically takes 2 minutes to a 30-second, and there is actually an improvement of 70 to 75% in the overall transaction time that is consumed by an employee, right? Which comes to the next indicator, which essentially would be experience enrichment. Can I have a KPI of looking at whether the experience now is not fragmented and it is consolidated through one technology, and it's enriched now. So surveys and whatever you would want to do. I think the third most important is every technology is always linked to productivity, right?
Ultimately.
So how has this actually brought the productivity to a specific level which was desired? If you were to take an example of an HR BP doing a regular job, sorry, I'm just taking it to a different direction. So HR BP would split some of its time to recruitment or to onboarding or to performance or to learning. How can I actually release 20 to 30% of the bandwidth of my HR BP for him or her to focus on, say, maybe some more key critical tasks which are important to the organization, which essentially also bring to, again, a classical question, is HR contributing to business or not, right? So that's where you release the bandwidth. That's where you see that 20 to 30% effectiveness measure coming in, and that's what you start measuring, post Gen AI or any technology introduction. So that's, my 2 cents on how you would look at 3 or 4 top key indicators or matrices that you can actually measure after you've introduced Gen AI.
Yeah, and I think that's very inspirational also, because like rightly you pointed that you don't even know there's a problem, right? So Gen AI is actually equipping you to kind of address and identify that problem first, and then go about, finding an alternate solution to it or how to address it in a more comprehensive way. So that's an interesting one. And when we talk about the implementation, we've spoken about the KPI that, of course, the viewers are taking a note of. Now, that also brings up or kind of opens up another landscape for me, is that what about the different global regions when there are these brands that are operating? How can generative AI be kind of adapted to suit the different HR practices and regulations in various global regions, if I could say?
So, I think it's a very apt questions in today's context, because being a global organization, I think 2 things is very important for me. One is how the culture fit when we try to send our own employee in a different region, how they are more adaptable to that culture, and it gives a lot of data whether there will be cultural fit, or there will be, what kind of, competence they need to have. So these are the things which is very, very important to understand through generative AI. Recently, we have to send a few engineers in Europe and in different part of the world, and we need to understand what kind of competency they need to have, what kind of culture, they need to adopt to acclimatize with their culture. So these are the few things which is, and another important is on the enterprise risks. What are the risk element that is
involved?
Yes, that involved. So these are the 3: competence, culture, and the risk. These are the 3 major elements for to understand the global organizations when we deploy our own manpower in different part of the world.
That's interesting.
Let me share a
Vaishnavi,
use
please.
case here.
Yeah,
So what Randeep mentioned about these employee experience, there was this feeling in the organization that we are not as big as probably a 10,000 or 20,000, but at Comviva we have a very wide spread of geo employees. So what problem we were facing, that we were not able to ensure the similar employee experience across the geographies because of the mere scale that we were operating at. We had few representatives, but they were at part of the organization as much as the other locations were. We used this use case as a problem for us through Gen AI, and we really got into a very, very personalized solution to the same, but ensuring that the TATs and SLAs and experiences are across the globe maintained 24/7, and their technology did help us. And when it was powered by a very well-intended employee experience to say that, hey, the intention of going live with this is only employee experience and to make you feel that you are all at the same place, it makes an objective clear. So what also helps is that with what objective you're starting the implementation of Gen AI, because that's how it will lead the result. So I think our use case of employee experience, ensuring the similar experience to all set of employees, at least in the bare minimum areas of service requisitions, the basic requests that come to HR, the transactions that flows to HR, at least ensuring that the TATs are ensured, the SLAs are ensured, it really did help us there.
That's great. I mean, Randeep, what would you add here?
Oh, I think from a technical standpoint, data security, privacy, when you're going global, because what could be acceptable in a geography might not be acceptable in any other geography, right? So you have to be very conscious about data privacy and security. And I think the overall governance that you put on top of any technology that gets rolled out, because when you go outside India, there are a lot of security concerns and governance principles that everyone will seek from you, right? As to how is my data secure? Who is consuming this data? And is your engine actually extracting data from a public source, sending it back to a public source? Yeah. So am I exposed? So from a technical standpoint, governance, looking at security concerns, and also, as Sudeep mentioned, cultural sensitivities which are built into what your engine is all about, right? So you can't be prompting or asking certain questions which you could ask in a specific geography, right? So when you're going global, I think that's where the first point comes into picture. When you're creating your enterprise SWOT, right? And it is SWAT, not SWOT. The SWOT will identify, if I am global, what will work at a global level, what will work at a regional level, right? And then you try and blend it. And that's where the real solutioning, happens. And that's where you bring these two worlds together, right? So from me, I think those are 2-3 key points that would come when you're actually going global with a solution like Gen AI. Because even now, generative AI, there is a lot of legislations that are coming up on generative AI. If you go outside, there are so many restrictions that have been put on artificial intelligence per se, right? Because ChatGPT opened up the whole new area of what data can do for you, right? And then comes what is the sourcing of data, my data internally or the external data consumption that's happening, right? So we need to be mindful of that as well. So that is from a technical standpoint, right? I'm sure, the rest of it has been covered very well, yeah.
Okay. I think just to kind of add a little bit of a more layer to this one before we hop on to another side of the conversation. If there could be one caveat that you could share, Randeep, on the same lines that, you're going to go global or you want to adapt to a global workforce, to a global policy and, overall ChatGPT, what is that one caveat that you're going to share with the viewers that they should be mindful of?
Solve the right problem globally, right? So that remains the mantra. Bring in something that will really help you in the long run and would cater to wherever you're going. So because you expand in a geography with a specific vision. What are you trying to achieve? Is it really a subset of what you're trying to do, which is new technology? Or it is a superset? It can't be a superset. Has to be a subset, right? So that's something that we need to be working out.
Absolutely. Define your problem.
Define your problem.
Then you know how to go about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Vaishnavi, what would you like to add
Look for
here?
sustainable solution, sustainable and scalable.
Awesome.
Look for sustainable.
Yeah, that works across geographies, that work across the workforce domains, right?
Aim what you can sustain.
Yeah, that's a power add-on.
That brings on to another point as well.
Yes,
it
please.
takes just a moment to trash a technology.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it takes years to build a technology.
Right.
It takes a minute to trash a technology, right?
Absolutely. And we've seen that in the past,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
So that's a beautiful point.
that is one. I think that's very, very critical that you talk about the sustainability and the scalability, because we're talking about the intertwining perspectives and the facets of the HR and the business, right? So that's good. Sudeep, what would you like to add here?
I think another important part is the risk element. What is the risk element involved in that entire process? That is very, very important, and we need to get some data on how we can mitigate those risks also.
Correct.
Is one element which is very
in
important.
anticipation of, like you said, that SWAT. We're not talking about the O right now, but that's interesting. Also, that kind of, makes me jump to the next part of this conversation that kind of addresses that how can generative AI be applied by organizations to improve their planning, decision-making, and overall talent management. I think this is one of the most volatile, domains that we're talking about AI to kind of revolutionize. So how does generative AI just changes the game for us? Vaishnavi, if I could start with you on this.
Sure, Soumya. It's actually a very powerful question, because if you look at the landscape of talent management, it's huge. And along with the landscape, the definition and interpretation across the segments of the industry per se about IT or manufacturing, it differs. So I think the one principle that AI is going to bring about is that it will bring a new perspective or similar perspective to the same person. So what I mean to say that when a person would, or when an organization would go for a talent management revamp or a rescale, or doing really thinking about doing the amendments about the new and upcoming changes in the new generations or millennials, or what you call that, the workforce, the AI would give you a perspective that you probably would have been missing because of the fact that you were not exposed to that side of the industry. So that one thing is that it'll help you enhance your perspectives. Now coming to talent management, if you look at the areas, let's say very typical when you say from onboarding to, let's say, or retirement, you look at the each facet, it will bring in a lot of efficiency. To start off, let's say onboarding or a recruitment, we've seen ample of tools. I mean, if there is one area in HR that AI is targeting, is talent
It's
acquisition.
right now.
I mean, everybody's talking about how they can do.
True.
But yes, it has helped in organizations.
Absolutely.
So definitely that's one prime area that can help you to start and save some time, energy, focus on strategic areas if those transactions can be managed in that particular area. But most importantly, I think the areas of skill management, identifying the genre of the skills that are going to come up for a particular product line or for a particular technology is something that AI will tell you. So if you probably help in creating some kind of unique set of employee base that will help you in catering to the new roadmap, I think AI can help you revamp your entire talent management workforce. It can actually tell you what kind of skills are required, what kind of skills are actually existing in your organization. If you pull that data, as he rightly said, that it can give you a mix of internal output of internal and external databases, and then you can make some decisions. Yeah, right. It's a build or a buy. Right. So building on to that point, it is a very, very crucial juncture to say that this is, as an HR and as a leader of the organization, you really have to deep dive into say whether I have to build or buy, and what kind of energies and resources will I really need to do that. And I think that's where my strategic focus, my internal deliberation as to what kind of speed and what kind of pace we want, AI would really help me. I think beyond that, it will help a big way in employee engagement. As I said in the beginning also, it will throw up an ideas as to how you can engage in different genre of people, different genre of workforces, different age groups, different skill group. Depending on what kind of average age you already are riding in your organization, it will throw up different kind of ideas to engage. That will help you to talk to your kind of workforce a little more deeper, a little more meaningfully. And the moment you start using these AI strategies into your talent management, your acceptability into the workforce would increase. They will really start respecting to say that, hey, now you're solving the real problem I was facing rather than the master landscape you were trying to put in front of me. So I think, yes, so all these areas, especially in the skills and engagement, would be really meaningfully leveraged by AI per se.
Absolutely. I just couldn't have agreed more on that, Vaishnavi. Thank you. That was a very well covered up. Sudeep, I'll come to you. What would you
think just to add what Vaishnavi has said, I think we have a complete talent inventory in every organization, and how we can take this inventory to create a succession planning for all the critical positions, and then building the competence. Do we have the right competence looking into the future technology? Because if we talk about the automotive industry, there are sea change in technology. For example, in powertrain technology, the emission norms, we are talking about the electromobility, hydrogen with IC engine, then your LPG. These are the technology which is changing very fast, and we don't know where it will land up. Yeah. We need to, every organization working on the concurrent, all this 5 or 6 technology. Do we have the right kind of competence to address those problems? And then generative AI really helpful to to understand the complete talent inventory, whether we need to have buy this from the outside, or we need to build within the organization. That is very, very important to to identify the right competence within the organization, and then building the succession planning for all these critical positions.
Fantastic.
And
Thank you.
just to
Yeah.
add,
Please.
it will actually help us in skill portability, as you say, cross-functional skill portability.
Right.
So probably, as I said, maybe I was not aware, but when I actually take a tool that helps and exposes me to the different side of the world, I will be in a better position to see whether my skills are portable, or I can really train or upgrade, or just make a decision of buying it. So I think it will help a lot in terms of skill portability as well.
Absolutely. I think that's very critical, right, Randeep? Like you pointed out right at the start that this will somehow kind of, help you decode the build versus buy paradox. So I'm just going to come to you. What is something that you'd like to add here?
I think 2-3 things that I would want to bring, onto the table. One, of course, is, as I said, I'll pick up a use case that we enabled, of course, on our platform was, we typically got a feedback from a client that whatever interviews are happening in my ecosystem, a lot of interviews happening, I don't get feedback from who has interviewed a candidate. A simple thing, right? Can Gen AI do something about it, right? So what we did was we picked up, adapted, an engine. And today the system actually is also able to give you transcripts of textual transcript and also video transcript of the interview that has been taken, right? Which is readily available, right? I'm not looking at feedback forms. So that's one thing, right? Second, which is very transactional, voluminous payslips. I'm sure Sudeep will agree to that. Always a pain point, right? What Gen AI could do to you is we created a talking payslip, which is a component which is in aberration or anomaly. It will talk to you and tell you why this has been calculated the way it is showing in payslip, right? Simple transactions managed through a very advanced generative AI concept, which was never thought through. So you go down to the bottom of the pyramid, look at these, equations that you need to solve. And I was also looking at one case study that BCG published about its application in learning and development. So they took up a sample organization with a typical learning team creating a course and looking at the cost that it took the organization to create that course, and of course, what was the kind of team deployed. So what it showed at the end of generative AI introduction was that a 9-week stretch that used to happen to create a course came down to 9 days or 6 days to create a course, which actually overall impacted the cost efficiency by 60%, reduced it by 60%, and a team of 10 working earlier was reduced to 3 or 4 people, right? So those are the kind of things that really gives you an impact of what have you introduced. So as I said earlier, you pick up that area where you really want to focus and build those matrices, build those indexes, which you will, start monitoring, and then you see wonders happening, right? And that's how that case study really impacted me because, you can take 10 other things, right? As she said, skills. Skills is one huge area. If I can predict the skills that are required as per my AOP in the next year and create job descriptions, which I need to go and hunt, I have solved a lot of problems, but this is actually sounding very easy, but very difficult to do, right? So that's essentially, what I would want to add to what the group has already shared. Yeah.
Wow, that's actually. So, if you wanted to say something,
I think it's really helpful for creating the future ready organization based on entire competence inventory. Do we have the right competence inventory? And it gives a lot of insight about how we are prepared to handle the future challenges.
Correct.
How our available talents are ready to take this future readiness. So these are the thing which is really very, very helpful.
You're definitely addressing the problem at hand. You're anticipating the problem and you have a solution already. So it's pretty much like a win-win sort of an equation that has been crafted and that is absolutely going leaps and bounds. That's fantastic. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up the conversation? Something that you would like to share with the viewers?
As I said, let's start falling in love with the problems that we are facing, look for the right solutions, and that solution has to solve the problem, which is essentially, I always say that solve the right problem, the technology is always right. You make it do what you would really want the technology to do.
And generative AI will definitely help you identify the right problem.
Absolutely.
Also,
because
that is a might.
Yeah, it's a self-training model.
Absolutely.
You train data on what you need to solve, right? So that's what training is all about. So you're training data in those realms boundaries, and that's how you make a technology successful. Otherwise, Gen AI, then will be something else. Then there'll be robos.
Yeah.
Let's put robos for engagement. So the world is endless there, right?
Endless there, absolutely.
So that's what it is.
But the impact is exponential. That's what we are looking for. Vaishnavi, your closing thoughts, please.
Yeah, so I think what has been said already, just to add, once you've defined the problem well, I think please aim for the right set of solution and something that you can sustain, as I said, and most importantly, look for the right set of people who can help you solve that problem, because you just don't want to solve a problem by the generic set of people who don't know how to solve that problem. So look for the right set of people. If you really want to use AI to solve your problem, along with the identification, look for people who know AI, look for people who can challenge your algorithm, look for people who can challenge your logic, which is running behind to solve that problem, so that your risk is mitigated and your sustainable solution is there. So look for people who have the right mindset and the right skill to solve that problem.
And that really spotlights that, that question of eliminating or augmenting AI, right? We are definitely on the other side. We are saying, let's just augment it through. Beautiful thought, Vaishnavi.
I think, my take on, how we can give a better employee experience through AI. That is the whole objective.
Yeah.
Okay, and how we have to create a future-ready organization.
Correct.
So these are the two, key takeaways, how we can, use this technology to give a better employee experience, and how to keep our organization for the future ready.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a groundbreaking conversation on optimizing HR through generative AI, strategies for effective implementation. Thank you so much for joining us and really inspiring us with your anecdotes, your perspectives, your learnings. I think that has been really, really a great add-on to the conversation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.